Is being a creative strategist the number one way for copywriters to make a ton of money in 2026? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Now, yesterday I made a video talking about how I think right now is a incredibly prime time for copywriters, which is almost the opposite of the conversation that's been going on for the last year and a half, because of obviously AI is decimating and wiping out so much of the copy world. And just to recap in like 20 seconds, I think that mediocre copywriters and good copywriters are the ones getting killed, but great copywriters are needed more than ever right now, because there's just a sea of sameness everywhere on the internet, because everyone's using AI, and AI is good, but it's not great. And that's where us great copywriters are so desperately needed. But if you call yourself a copywriter in 2026, very few people are going to want to hire you, because it's just such a low value term, and it's silly and dumb, but words matter, semantics matter. And when I first heard the word creative strategist, I thought it was just that, semantics, just another way to sell copywriting services to copywriters, but to make it sexier. And it was smart, and that's what copywriters do. They come up with great words or terms to rephrase things. But ultimately, a copywriter or a creative strategist, it doesn't matter what you call it. What people just really want is somebody who can make the cash register sing. And that will always be the case, no matter what the year is, no matter what phrasing we're using in that year. It just seems that creative strategist is the hot buzzword right now. And I will admit, I think it's a bit more than a buzzword. When I first heard it, it just seemed to me like opportunistic people taking advantage of the people who just constantly buy copywriting stuff. And let's face it, not everybody's buying copywriting stuff anymore, or very few people are. In fact, I was on a very enlightening call with a brilliant gentleman named Lawrence yesterday, and we were talking about what I believe is the best copywriting program ever put out, the ultimate desktop copy coach by the late and great Clayton Makepeace. This was assembled by a gentleman named Tony Flores, and it's hands down the number one copywriting tool that I've gone back to over and over again. And as you can see, it was within an arm's reach of me in this video, and I didn't even think I was going to mention this in this video. In fact, I rarely know what I'm going to mention in these videos, so it's very organic. But despite that being the best copywriting course that I've ever come across, even when I was trying to sell it 10 years ago, I tanked sales. I mean, I think I sold one of them. And I have a list of people that are interested in copywriting, but they didn't want to invest in the very best thing they could have ever invested in, which made me just start questioning my own skills. And then just, is copywriting even sexy enough for some people? And the answer is no, a lot of times. And I had to come to grips with that, which is why right now creative strategist is sexy to a lot of people, because it's making the cash register sing. And there's also some validity to exactly what a creative strategist is. So the fact of the matter is, AI can generate a ton of copy in a couple clicks. The problem is that to an untrained person, and even a mediocre or good copywriter, they'll look at it and they'll be impressed, and they think it's good enough, and they'll publish it. And it sucks, because it doesn't bring the sales that they hope for. A great copywriter can take a look at AI written copy, see the weaknesses, adjust it, give it some human elements, and fix it. And that works for smart copywriters. And so, because of AI's ability to crank out stuff so fast, the real opportunity is for people who can come up with 5 or 10 hooks and test them really fast, or 5 or 10 guarantees or offers and be able to present them to somebody who has a huge ad budget, but they need to test a bunch of things to be able to figure out where to allocate that ad spend. And in the past, before we had AI, it would take a solid month to write a really good promo because you had to do all this research and you'd meticulously go through every line. Well, those days are pretty much over. AI can do the heavy lifting, but you still need that great copywriter to come in there and clean it up. And that's where I think the creative strategists are really cleaning up and being helpful to a lot of businesses out there who do need more sales, and they're not necessarily looking for a copywriter. The problem is now is that the term creative strategist and the opportunities are now being sold to the masses. So now you have a bunch of undereducated, mediocre copywriters branding themselves as creative strategists, and businesses are going to suffer because the cash register is not going to ring. And then next year, there's going to have to be another term for them to sell all the habitual buyers. And that's how it kind of always happens. So at first I was frowning at the word creative strategist. Now I think it's really smart. Let me give you an idea, an example in the real world. About 15 years ago, I had a website, a really cool website with all kinds of built-in marketing information, and I just didn't need it. It was going another direction. It was an incredible resource. I offered to sell it to my email list for just $1,000. It was a steal, and nobody bought it. And I was shocked. I'm like, God, am I a crappy salesperson? No, I just didn't frame it right. And 6 months later, that same website, instead of selling just that one website for $1,000, the word licensing was a hot thing, partly due to Bob Serling, who's a brilliant, genius guy. I could probably reach right back here and pull out a Bob Serling licensing program as well. Somewhere it's back in there. So what I did is I took that same website that I was trying to sell on its own and couldn't, and I sold a license to it. In fact, I sold 4 or 5 licenses, I don't quite remember, for $1,500 a piece. And the only thing different we did was sell a license to it, which meant we sold it to multiple people, and we offered to rebrand it, basically just put a new logo and name on each of the sites for the people and uploaded it to their servers. So I ended up making $6,000 instead of $1,000 just by changing one little word. Semantics. Yeah, pretty much. And that is a great example of a creative strategist coming up with out-of-the-box ideas that businesses really need. And, you know, I have to admit, with AI, it can assist you with ideas. You can just talk to them like, hey, I got this idea for X, Y, and Z, and this is why I want to do it, and here's the audience, yada, yada, yada. Can you give me 10 other ideas? And maybe 8 of those ideas are junk, but maybe 2 are great. And then you run down that rabbit hole, and those 2 ideas run you to 4 or 5 other ideas, and then you present those to the client or whoever you're working for, and all of a sudden they're like, Jason, you're brilliant. You're so creative. And you're like, I just asked AI. But you got to have kind of a curious mind. I think curiosity is the number one thing that's going to help somebody to be really good at sales. You got to be curious about the angles and the offers, but most importantly, you got to be curious about the customers and be curious about what is it that they really feel and are experiencing, and what do they really want. And you got to think about it from an angle of truly wanting to help them, not necessarily making the sale, because sometimes the easiest way to make a sale is to not be completely married to the outcome, because sometimes when you're giving a pitch, it's not right for everybody, and you shouldn't try to make it right for people who it's not right for. And when you project that aura of not needing the sale necessarily, but you're trying to match whatever it is you're selling with the right prospect, they can feel that. And they can also feel when you're trying to twist their arm and sell them something that they don't want or need. And sure, sometimes you can get away with it, but you kill your reputation. And if you know anything about sales, the easiest way to make sales is to sell to people who you've sold to before, but you need to give them a good experience. And so, creative strategist, is it just semantics? Kinda, but kind of not. And if you're a creative person, I still think you need to actually have the skills that it takes in copywriting to develop, or you're not going to know whether your creative ideas are actually going to work or not. So there's really no shortcut, I don't think, to becoming a copywriter or a creative strategist, unless you're just a brilliant salesperson or just so open and honest and in love with the product, and you can convey that with your words and with your physiology. Physiology matters so much. In fact, you see me moving my hands right now? I don't do that on purpose. It's something that comes naturally. But that type of physiology, when somebody watches, it conveys, like, I don't know, this energy or this believability. But if I were to just sit here still, my physiology is totally different. And it's completely different if I'm sitting with my arms crossed, right? That's a buzzkill in itself. And I think about when Lindsay is like amazed, just like, how do you always know who's going to win The Bachelor or The Bachelorette? I'm like batting 95% of picking the winners on that show. And I can't believe I just admitted to watching the show. I haven't watched it in a while. But when I did watch it, I would always pick the winner. And she was like, how do you always know? And I was like, it's simple. Watch the show, but turn the sound off. Don't listen to what people say. Listen and watch their body language and movement. And you can just see in a woman's body, when she comes across a man that she either likes or dislikes, you don't need to hear anything being said, because most of it's just pseudo, I don't know, just like trying to impress people. It's not the real. But the physiology and the body language is very hard to hide. And so as a salesperson, if you're actually into something and you're energetic about it, people can see that. And it's very, very helpful in sales to be dynamic and to be put movement into things and know how to use your rhythm and cadence when you're talking. And this comes naturally to me because I've been doing it my whole life. I don't have a script for these videos. I don't even have bullet points of what I'm going to talk about. I've just been freewheeling. And for those of you who have stuck around this long, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. If you want to watch yesterday's video about why I think great copywriters are needed now more than ever, it was the video published yesterday. I don't know what platform you're watching this on. Whatever you are, please make sure that you subscribe and like and do all those things. It helps me to build the channel and to keep motivated to keep doing these. So I appreciate you. Also, if you want to learn copywriting stuff and get really great at this, I do have my Rich Writers Guild. I will link down below where you can get that. Peace.